Nearly 80,000 shipping containers, 50% more than typical, are heaped in diverse configurations at the port of Savannah, like toy bricks flung from the heavens. The steel containers are waiting for ships to transport them to their final destination, or for trucks to transport them to warehouses that are already overflowing. Owners of about 700 containers have left them at the port on the banks of the Savannah River for a month or longer. Griff Lynch, executive director of the Georgia Ports Authority, lamented, "They're not coming to get their freight. This is the most crowded yard we've ever had." Another ship, the 1,207-foot-long Yang Ming Witness, glides silently into an open berth as he speaks, its decks crammed with containers full of apparel, shoes, gadgets, and other goods created in Asian factories. Thousands of boxes are quickly removed from the ship by towering cranes, additional cargo that must be stored somewhere. It's come to this in the great supply chain disruption, they're running out of storage space at one of the country's busiest ports. As major ports deal with a massive backlog of cargo, what once appeared like a passing fad, a traffic jam that will pass, is now being considered as a new reality that could necessitate a significant rethinking of the world's maritime infrastructure. Mr. Lynch has unwillingly forced ships to wait at sea for more than 9 days as the Savannah port works through the backlog. On a recent afternoon, almost 20 ships were stranded in the Atlantic, anchored up to 17 miles off the shore. From the more than 50 ships stranded in the Pacific near Los Angeles last week to lesser numbers bobbing off terminals in the New York region to hundreds stranded off Chinese ports, such queues have grown commonplace around the world. The instability in the shipping industry, as well as the broader supply chain issue, shows no signs of abating. It is a persistent cause of concern for the global economy, casting doubt on once optimistic projections of a robust rebound to growth as vaccines curb the pandemic's spread. According to the Institute of Supply Management, the disruption helps explain why Germany's industrial fortunes are sagging, why inflation has become a source of concern for central bankers, and why American manufacturers are now waiting a record 92 days on average to assemble the parts and raw materials they need to make their goods. The turmoil looks to be a series of interwoven product shortages on the surface. Because shipping containers are in short supply in China, firms in the rest of the world that rely on Chinese-made parts and chemicals have had to reduce production. However, the scenario at Savannah's port reveals a more sophisticated and pervasive set of overlapping issues. It isn't only that products are in short supply, it's because items become caught in the wrong places and are separated from their intended destinations by tenacious and continuously shifting barriers. The containers heaped on ships stranded at sea and massed on riverbanks are the inverse of the finished goods shortage at stores. The backlog in warehouses is a result of a lack of truck drivers to transport items to their final destinations. Last month, his yard housed 4,500 containers that had been waiting for at least 3 weeks on the docks. He remarked, "That's bordering on ludicrous." The fact that these conflicts are playing out even in Savannah demonstrates the extent of the chaos. Savannah, behind Los Angeles, Long Beach and New York, New Jersey, is the third largest container port in the United States, with 9 berths for container ships and plenty of area for growth. Mr. Lynch is leading a $600 million expansion to relieve the congestion. To accommodate the largest container ships, he is replacing one berth with a larger one. He plans to expand the storage yard by 80 acres, allowing for 6,000 more containers. He's expanding his rail yard from 5 to 18 tracks to accommodate additional trains and provide an alternative to trucks. Mr. Lynch recognizes the importance of development, but he also recognizes that expanding facilities will not address his difficulties. "It doesn't matter if I have 50 berths if there's no space out here," he replied, peering out at the stacks of containers. Many of the containers are stacked 5 high, making it more difficult for cranes to navigate through the towers and lift the necessary boxes when the trucks come to transport them. The closure of a massive container terminal off the coast of Ningbo, China, has added to the delays in recent weeks. In the midst of a terrible outbreak of COVID, Vietnam, a hub for the garment industry, was shut down for several months. Mr. Lynch denies the idea that reduced cargo leaving Asia will give relief to crowded ports in the United States. "The ships all come in at the same time 6 or 7 weeks later," Mr. Lynch added. "That's not going to help." As shipping prices rose and containers became limited early this year, The problem was commonly assumed to be the result of pandemic lockdowns. With schools and offices closed, Americans stocked up on home office supplies and basement gym equipment, relying mainly on Asian companies. Global shipping was meant to resume once life was restored. But, according to data collated by Sea Intelligence, a Danish industry research organization, the congestion is worsening, with roughly 13% of the world's cargo shipping capacity clogged by delays. Many businesses now believe that the pandemic has permanently changed the way they do business. Those who may never have bought for groceries or apparel online before, particularly the elderly, have tasted the convenience as they try to adjust to a devastating infection. Many people are expected to continue doing so, putting strain on the supply chain. Could we have envisioned mom and dad pointing and clicking to buy a piece of furniture before the pandemic? Rule Joyner, proprietor of 24E Design Company, a boutique furniture business with a brick storefront in Savannah's elegant historic district, agreed. Over the last year, his online sales have tripled. In addition to these behavioral shifts, the supply chain disruption has created new frictions. Bottlenecks tend to create more bottlenecks. Warehouses have grown overburdened as a result of numerous enterprises ordering extra and sooner, particularly as they prepare for the hectic holiday season. As a result, containers have stacked up at Savannah's port. Mr. Lynch's team, which is generally focused on its own facilities, has spent time exploring inland for spare warehouse spaces in order to give customers with alternate shipping routes. A big retailer just filled its 3 million square feet of local warehouse space to capacity. Port personnel worked to move the cargo by rail to Charlotte, N.C., where the shop had more space, as the containers piled up at the yard. While such ingenuity may bring some comfort, the port's demands are only increasing. On a sweltering afternoon in late September, Christmas felt eerily close. The containers placed along the riverbanks were almost certainly filled with holiday decorations, baking sheets, gifts, and other supplies for the world's largest wave of consumption.